So we have to break down this latest because anytime that we get to talk about Hillary Clinton and the FBI, well, we're going to bring it up. But now we have a new twist because the FBI, we know they spent years publicly investigating Hillary Clinton's email setup. But now we learn that James Comey's own inner circle used the private email accounts to leak information to the media, and it adds another layer to, but they left Hillary off the narrative. So, Chris, when we look at this, what does it say about the FBI that they launched an entire investigation over Clinton's email server, and Comey's own staff was doing the same thing on a private email?
It's just hysterical. I mean, at this point, it's just more and more evidence that one, they always did believe that they were above the law. Two, they believed that they were the arbiters of who was actually under the law. Remember, we've talked about it a couple times, but that strange press conference where Comey said that they're not going to be moving forward with charges against Hillary Clinton, as if it was his decision as director of the FBI, as opposed to the Department of Justice. That's not the way that works. You're not allowed to do that. You're also not supposed to be that person who's out there doing the exact same thing that you're kind of accusing people of. No, they weren't hiding government records, but they were hiding government communications, which I guess you can count as a record there. They were doing so to undermine a political opponent. This just is another piece, and a kind of a funnier and more ridiculous piece, a farcical piece of this entire puzzle.
Well, let's go back to 2017. Before Congress, Comey admitted that he leaked material to the press because of President Trump's tweeting, stating that he might have some of their meetings. Take a look.
Did you show copies of your memos to anyone outside of the Department of Justice?
Yes. The president tweeted on Friday, after I got fired, that I better hope there's not tapes. I woke up in the middle of the night on Monday night, because it didn't dawn on me originally, that there might be corroboration for our conversation. There might be a tape. And my judgment was I needed to get that out into the public square. And so I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter. Didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel.
Now, I love this, Chris, because it's called Operation Tropic Vortex. And the person that's at the center of this is Comey's chief of staff, right? They're the ones that are actually going out there using the private email accounts to leak to journalists. But when I read that this morning, I was like, man, this is like a Tom Clancy novel, but this is real life, Bedford. This is what we have to deal with.
It's literally an intelligence operation against the sitting president, where he is finally mercifully shown the door, which should have happened a long time before. But President Trump, like a lot of people, his first instinct was to believe that the police and the feds and the FBI were above board, that they weren't completely corrupted through, that their goal wasn't to take him down and take down his attorney general and destroy his presidency. So he let him stick around for a little while longer. And then he went back to his initial mission on the way out the door, which is, I need a special counsel. That's what we need to do. Anything we can from inside this government and its intelligence apparatus, whether it's leaking, whether it's sending out classified information, whether it's having a whole bunch of people, as it later turns out, who are charged with leaking. This is their job, in their job description, essentially, to get this out to the press in order to make sure that we can hamstring this administration and try to slow them down in every single thing, try to cause investigations, eventually try to send people to prison over something that we knew from the very beginning was at best suspect and at worst basically just completely fraudulent. And that's the position that Comey and all these other people were in. All these people who portrayed themselves as white knights of the Republic were actually just willing to break any moral rule, break any government rule, break any ethical rule in order to get their politics across the finish line.
Chris, I'm sure you remember the 2016 election, and everybody thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. And then there was an FBI email, or a memo, I should say, that dropped, and it changed absolutely everything. So now, knowing what we know now, and looking back, like, what kind of hypocrisy are we even dealing with? Because if Comey had known, right, like, if anybody was ever going to find this out about him, you don't think that he would actually go through and write a memo about Hillary Clinton doing something like this.
Well, it's just like when the president said, you better sure hope there are no tapes. Well, it turns out there are memos, there are records, there are emails, there are task descriptions, there are specific communications, Every single aspect of this, they documented. And the fact that they're willing to go after Hillary at all shows that they're just so confident in their untouchability. They are the untouchables. They're the ones who can't be got. But it's not because they're not corrupt. It's because that they're too powerful. Because who's going to look? Because in order to take them down, you would threaten discrediting the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Intelligence. You really want to be investigations. You really want to be doing that? And you know what? In the first Trump administration, they had multiple defenders. People like John Bolton, who we were talking about earlier in the week. Lots of people were convinced of this line, like, listen, there may be something shady here, but it's not worth the damage to the credibility of the United States federal government and the police agencies, the intelligence apparatus, the investigations, the Department of Justice, the former president, the election, to put that out in the open. It's just an airing of dirty laundry. We don't do that, do we? But it turns out they actually do. They're willing to air all the dirty laundry they possibly can if it's going to put their enemies or political opponents in prison. They just didn't expect anyone to turn around and do it to themselves. But in doing so, they dragged their own reputation so deeply through the mud. But by the time they were raiding Mar-a-Lago, you had pretty middle of the road Republican senators, law and order Republican senators, immediately out there filming on their back porch, posting on the internet saying, "This is BS. I'm calling it right now. This is a politicized attack," in a way that they never, ever, ever would have done when James Comey was first giving that testimony and people were trusted to believe him. Another thing about this, every week we're learning more and more from primary documents about their actual complicity in all of these events. And you keep on, previously, it started to die down, hearing people from CNN and hearing Democrats saying, listen, the investigations previously, they didn't find all this stuff. What are you talking about? Well, all the investigations had before was people like Comey's word, people like Brennan's word, people like Clapper's word. And guess what? They lied. They didn't tell the whole truth. Now we have the primary documents. Now we can prove that they're in trouble.
Chris, you mentioned the FBI and its reputation. We actually have some good news, at least, to say. I don't know if it's good news in the way that it happened, that we had to wait so long. Of course, I'm talking about the whistleblowers. There are 8 FBI whistleblowers that have been reinstated. They went through and exposed bureau corruption. It took a long time, Chris. We have been calling out for it on this show, and I know others have as well. Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both were part of the 8 that were reinstated. So unfortunately for Steve Friend, who is a friend of the show, he's going to have to go by FBI rules now. He's not going to be able to come on the show as often, and he'll have to play by that old rule book again. But it is good to see this. I just wish that this had happened back in February and that we didn't have to spend so much time like, hey guys, it's a good time to do the right thing.
You're right. And Steve Baker and Joe Hanneman over at the Blaze investigation team have done such an excellent job, not just in the deep dives and the investigations, exposing the wrongdoing at the FBI, not just in pouring through the documents and the accusations of serious problems with politicization and corruption at the FBI from these whistleblowers, but in also telling the human story of these people. The houses lost, the marriages strained, the inability to the being disallowed from even trying to get a job. Forget about being able to keep a job because you're still technically employed by the FBI, but you're not allowed to draw a paycheck. You're not allowed to work anywhere else. The stains on reputations that these guys went through in a country that allegedly has protections for whistleblowers. Now, we kind of know that that's not true. Anyone who's ever blown the whistle or dealt with whistleblowers knows a lot of whistleblower protections basically just mean you probably won't go to prison, but we're not going to be able to protect you from losing your job or being driven into bankruptcy or having your reputation tarnished. That's a sad reality from a country that really does rely on these people who are willing to come forward and blow that whistle. And so many Democrats, by the way, and partisans who are anti-Trump are willing to come forward from the intelligence apparatus throughout the first term and point the finger and be protected. And they get to go on CNN and they get to go on MSNBC. They get to write in the New York Times. They get to get book deals. They get to run for Congress, some of them, who knows, all under the idea that they are these brave whistleblowers. And it turns out that they were completely full of it. And these guys who were really suffering for telling the truth were correct. I know these things take time. I know you need to be careful. I would rather the Trump administration be careful in righting wrongs than be quick in righting wrongs and make mistakes that can later be undone. So I know that they have to do this carefully. I hope it wasn't just the pressure that we were bringing, but I think that had a lot to do with it that got them to do the right thing. And listen, I'm glad it finally happened. I'm glad for these guys that they're finally back at work. They have their reputations restored. They can draw a paycheck. They can take care of their families. They can do what they always just wanted to do, which was uphold the law in the United States.
I'm glad those character issues went away for them as well.